Welcome to the Throttle Up Leadership Podcast. Our theme for 2025 is the future of work. Meaning is the new money. In a world shaped by rapid innovation and constant change, the pursuit of purpose and impact has never been more important. I'm Dr. John D'Antico, your host, bringing over 30 years of experience in leadership, strategic thinking, and purpose-driven innovation. Here, we tackle the pressing challenges of our time, from the rise of artificial intelligence to the growing need for meaning in the workplace. Together, we'll uncover how leaders can ethically integrate AI to enhance decision-making and keep humanity at the heart of their organizations. Remember, amidst all the technological advancements, in the end, it's always about the people. This podcast is your resource for actionable tools, thought-provoking discussions, and inspiring stories. It's time to go beyond leadership development and focus on leadership impact, creating workplaces where people thrive, innovation flourishes, and meaning truly becomes the new currency. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Now, let's throttle up and dive into today's episode. Hello again and welcome to the Throttle Up Leadership Podcast. I am your host, Dr. John D'Antico. With me today is Lyubim Kogan, a 5-time immigrant, Olympic qualifier, and NYU graduate in finance and accounting. Lyubim led an investment advisory firm through the 2009 financial crisis, guiding every client without a single net loss. He co-authored a bestseller with Steve Forbes, spoken at the United Nations alongside Brian Tracy, and built a career many would consider complete. But in 2015, Lyubim chose a different path, returning to a collapsed Ukraine after the annexation of Crimea. There he founded wingsforheroes.org, a mission where wounded veterans, including amputees, reclaim joy and dignity by literally learning to fly. Today we'll talk about what it means to keep a promise, lead with nothing left to prove, and build something bigger than yourself. And I'm truly pleased and honored to have Lyubim here with me today. Good morning, Lyubim. How are you?
Good morning, John. It's an honor to be here. Thanks for having me on.
The honor is mine, I assure you. I'd like to start off by asking you, tell me a bit about yourself. Where did you grow up? And what were some of the influences in your early life?
I grew up in the former Soviet Union in the 70s and the 80s. When I was 5 years old, the Afghanistan war started, and it lasted until I was 16. The first part of my conscious life, the war was on the background, on the backdrop, and the military service was mandatory. When you turned 18, they would draft you and send in my case, when I was growing up, people were going to Afghanistan. It was a big thing because I saw young men, at that time they were older guys to me, coming back from Afghanistan. They were generous to kids who wanted to do sports, and I was athletic all my life. They'd spend endless amount of time helping me and my friends to practice our sports. But then at the end of the day, everybody got drunk because that's the only medication that was available. Almost on a daily basis, the police would show up and pick up fights with Afghanistan vets. It was part of the failure in the system. Since early childhood, I always thought, why these guys who to me were so great, why were they drinking? And why would the system that was supposed to protect them turn against them? You asked me people who were influenced in my early life, I would say, and was my coaches, people who I ski jumped, that was my sport. And basically, growing up in the Soviet Union, you didn't have many chances. You could be a scientist, you could be an athlete, or you could be a musician. But it was a collective society where everybody had to work for the government. Private sector not only didn't exist, it was prohibited. So if you wanted to start your own business and you were caught, people were sent to prison. The big influence in my life were definitely my coaches, who gave me an opportunity to see the world immigrating to the United States. All I wanted to do ski. I moved to the United States in 92, and I was fortunate to get a scholarship from National Sports Academy, and that was the beginning of my life in America. I came to boarding school. They gave me a place to live. They fed me. They gave me skis and said, you can ski as much as you want to.
Not too bad.
It was great.
Well, I'm glad that part of it obviously worked out for you. I would like to ask you this question, and that is from Wall Street to the Olympics and then returning to Ukraine to launch Wings for Heroes. What inspired you to take that bold step, and what was the greatest challenge in making it a reality?
That's an excellent question. First of all, making it to the Olympics was the challenge was geographical challenge because when I came to the United States, I had two dreams. One was mine and one was my father's. My father's dream was that I would get into a really good business school, and my dream was to go to the Olympics. I got into NYU, and then I realized that in order for me to ski, I have to make a 600-mile commute every weekend. So the way I structured my schedule was that I finished only classes on Thursday. I would catch a bus from New York City to Albany, 150 miles. Then I would pick up my car and drive to the Adirondacks, another 150 miles. Then I would train Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And on Sunday night, I would return back. So that went on for more than 2 years. The challenge was staying disciplined and giving up the college experience. I see my roommate and everybody who I went to classes, they had plans for parties on the weekends. And I was busy chasing my dream.
Yeah. And chasing dreams sometimes requires you to make sacrifices. But obviously, in your case, it was really about focus and dedication. And I think sometimes today we forget what it takes. So I appreciate that. Let me ask you this. With Wings for Heroes, you help wounded veterans literally learn to fly. What impact have you seen on those veterans and on yourself from this mission?
First of all, I'm a paragliding pilot. So one of the things that I know how to do is to fly a paraglider, and just paraglider is the little plastic bag that hangs above your head, and you have strings and you're suspended in a backpack. So we don't have a fuselage and we don't have an engine. We're just hanging thousands of feet above the air. The first time I went as a passenger, I thought I was going to die. And that 20 minutes, I didn't have any problems except hoping that we'll land alive and well. And then later on, when I was working in Ukraine, I saw from early on, from 2016, running into amputees. And there was one case where we had one guy rolled out from a gas station, a highway, and he went towards the highway. And I thought, there's nowhere to walk. Like you and I, we could not walk. And I was thinking, where's this guy rolling? But then I got busy. And about less than 30 minutes later, a huge thunderstorm rolled in, and it was powerful. So I got one of our drivers, we got a pickup truck and went in the direction where that amputee went, and we found him on the side of the road, completely splashed in, he was wet, he was covered in mud. And just to give geographical proximity, we were 25 miles from Hungarian border, 25 miles from Slovakian borders, and about 40 miles from Ukrainian border. So there was endless lane of trucks going. And, one of the things is that they created a lot of splashing. And another thing that really surprised me is that nobody stopped because you see the guys in the wheelchair. Fast forward another 6 years to 2022. I saw a young girl, teenager, who walked out in front of the packed football stadium. And she said, they can come and take our land. They can even take a part of my body, but they're not going to break me. The stadium blew up. That was the moment I decided that I'm going to do something. I'm not going to think that I should do something. I'm actually going to do something for amputees. Seeing how much suffering and challenges they have to go through, I thought I would provide that moment of psychological relief. I will take them off the cliff, and at that moment when they're thinking they're dying, I hope they would forget they are missing a leg or two. That was the beginning of it. That was the beginning. Then it took quite a while to take the first passenger up in the air. But once we flew the first guy, then I found out that they require extensive physical therapy, specific physical therapy that they could not find at home. So I added physical therapy. Then I realized they have a lot of psychological issues. Then we added a psychologist. So for me, it was learning what a person who sacrificed so much while defending their country, what they need, and then actually solving the issues, because I did everything by myself with these hands, all the things that I just told you about, and worked out really efficiently. I don't have to submit paperwork, and they don't have to submit paperwork. They referred to me by organizations, and then the veterans referring other veterans, and that's how the mission is running. What I learned was that people who lose limbs, they're really strong and resilient. And they inspire others, because when other people watching somebody who is missing a leg, working so hard, just to give you a specific example, on June the 25th, we finished rehab for one of our veterans. He spent 1 month here because we needed to save his only leg. He was putting so much pressure on one leg that his muscles got compressed, pushing in his sciatic nerve. My physical therapist said that if we let it go for a few more weeks, he can have one wrong move and he may lose his only leg. He may become paralyzed. So I brought him here, and when we see that, and everybody sees him because you cannot miss him. First of all, he wears the logo shirts all the time, and he's missing a leg. Here he is in the middle. He's a number one who we flew the first time. He volunteered to go and defend his country. He just turned 20, 13 days before. First, he was flying drones, and then he kept writing, asking that they would transfer him to an assault brigade, because he said, I feel like I'm hiding behind the civilians and should be in front. And I asked him, knowing everything that you know right now, what would you do differently? And he said, when I was flying drones, I had a 95% chance that I would come home alive and well. But if I join an assault brigade, I have a 95% plus chance of getting killed. And I asked him, now you lost your leg. And actually he lost his leg because he was the closest guy to his commander, and his commander was shot. He said he was within arm's reach, and he didn't make it to his commander. He got shot in the leg. And he said, you know what? I would do exactly the same. And that's coming from that time he was 20, now he's 23. And everything is relative. At that age, I was a kid. I was just starting out. And I was really impressed with the strength, with that mentality, with that mindset, with patriotism. He's willing to sacrifice his life and his body to defend his country. And when he goes through that experience, he's an example to everyone. One of the things is that we have 2 legs and 2 arms, and we really have nothing to complain about.
One of the things I have learned and taken aboard myself is this idea of hire for values and really hire for heart. When I talk about heart, I'm talking about perseverance, grit, things people have endured not only from wartime injuries or other kinds of mishaps or accidents, but the psychological scars, the one that no one sees, from upbringings, from abuse, those kinds of things. And to see those people prosper and do well. If you have your full faculties, your arms, legs, brain, health, you look and say, what do I have to complain about? What is my problem here? I'm making this bigger than it is. And they are inspiring. I really try to support, encourage hiring managers or coaches to hire people who've had difficult upbringings or have faced challenges like losing a limb. Because one thing you're going to find from them is they know how to get things done. They know how to persevere. They live by the mantra, no matter what happens, just keep moving forward.
Yeah.
Sometimes you get an inch. Sometimes you get a foot. Sometimes you get 10 yards. Sometimes you only get a half an inch. But it doesn't matter. Just keep moving forward. That, to me, is a golden idea of life. I'd love to get your reflection on that.
I agree with you 100%. I had a difficult childhood and a difficult youth going from a former Soviet Union where I grew up during Cold War thinking that Ronald Reagan was sitting in his office. He had this red button and we are all done. I'm hearing the same thing was on the other side of the pond, but when I came to the United States, the situation was totally different. And you've read about my accomplishments, so I'm not going to repeat that. But once I got to the top of my financial and personal development career, after speaking at the UN, I thought I am going to print cash. I didn't have any competition because I was 39. I was just about to turn 40, and I was the youngest guy in the room. I ended up in Ukraine visiting my dad and had this opportunity to take over. I did an internal audit, and based on what I found out, they knew that they have to lay off top management. And after Crimea was annexed, things changed fast, but people kept working the old way, hoping that the next good cycle will come and it will lift them from all the issues they had, like it happened many times before. The company kept growing and expanding, so they've done really well. But now we have this situation that, US dollar went up 3 times. The volumes that they were selling got cut at half and then another half, but people didn't have the experience and they didn't know what to do. So when they asked me to take over the company, I basically saw that everyone around, because I came in as an American, and they were looking up to me and listening. It was really easy to get people to follow you. And I had that one chance, So first thing, I stopped all the politics. Said, if there's any politics, we're done. Elite. It's bye-bye. There is no discussion. If you want to point fingers, that is finished. If you want to start any arguments, it's not allowed. So I take over this company in the middle of the war that nobody recognized at the beginning. If you think back in 2014, Putin annexed Crimea and nobody in the world said anything. They just let him have it. Then he moved his troops to eastern Ukraine. They removed the flags. They didn't have flags on their shoulders. So it was classified as a terrorist operation from 2014 until 2022. That's 8 years. Meanwhile, I am selling diesel and gasoline, right? If I need a train load of diesel, first of all, nobody would finance it. Then I would find financing, nobody would insure it. And it doesn't matter what size of a company you have. If you lose a train load of diesel, you're going out of business. That is a lot of money. So I am operating in an environment where nothing is certain. Finding the money, then you're finding the insurance. But the biggest challenge were the people. You and I, we have a minimum standard. When you go to university in the United States and then you get a job and then you start moving up, there are minimum requirements that everybody knows what their job description is. Everybody knows what it means to get it done well. And everybody knows how to do it on time. Employees have some issues. They go to the boss and they say, look, we cannot solve this. We need help. That was not the case in Ukraine. We had over 90 gas stations. I went around all the gas stations and found people who created an exemplary environment in that mess. I'll give you one guy specifically who I hired, who I put in charge of all the gas stations. He was in the Odessa region, which is southern part. One of his gas stations, he didn't have running water, but they got second or third place in the city for the most beautiful rose bush. And that rose bush was like huge, Here are the prices for the gasoline that you're selling, and here is this rose bush. And they said, how did you do it? Then another thing, it may sound to you like a small thing. All of his people looked like they work for one company. White shirts, our colors were red and white. White shirts with a little bit of red, and they all had badges, and they all, they were clean and they were all presentable. They were trained. It was all other regions. It was not like that. It was all different colors. Everybody showed up, like they showed up to play cards. And I got that guy and I said, oh, and by the way, he enrolled. You know how you have frequent purchase programs? He enrolled, sign up for membership, become the member of our company, and then get discounts. 90% of all the memberships came from that guy. I took that guy and I said, okay, you're moving to headquarters. And you're going to be the boss of all the gas stations. I want to see what you did there. I wanted to see it everywhere. And I don't care how you do it. If you need help, you come to me. Whatever you need, I'll give it to you. But your responsibility is to make all 92 look like, I think he had 6 or 7, like yours. So I took a guy that was just somewhere low on the corporate pole, and I moved them all the way up. I went around finding people like that in accounting, in finance, in the legal department. In every department, I found people who cared, who really wanted to work. When the situation changed, the company expanded east right before Crimea was annexed. They took out loans in US dollars and the currency collapsed, so they couldn't service them. To make it look like everything's okay, they kept paying and using operational cash flow to cover and keep their credit rating. And when I came in, we couldn't buy the product. There were 2 pay periods behind. The 3rd pay period is a criminal responsibility for all the management, because in the 90s, when the Soviet Union broke up, companies weren't paying people and Ukraine was starving. The government got tough and said, if you're not paying your employees, we're going to put you to prison. And that's how they were able to stop that. So I took over a company that was 2 pay periods behind. We didn't know how we're going to keep the lights on. There was no long-term planning. We were counting how many gallons to send to each gas station. I had to put 2 people on the phone. They called every day after midnight. So in the morning when we came in, we knew how much each gas station sold. And it was done all by hand. We're talking about, we're a big company. We have 2,000 plus employees. We're nationwide. And if you look at the Ukrainian map, it's a huge country geographically. But everything was done by 5 or 6 people who really believed. I couldn't take my salary because as an executive, if I take an executive salary, it means it's less diesel is going to the gas stations, less sales, less profits, and we're just digging a deeper hole. And everyone who was standing behind, like you said, it was about heart. They really cared. Everyone who was in the team, they cared. And then I started opening it up and saying, hey, anybody who wants to contribute, we have a brainstorming session on Wednesdays. Everybody could come. So we found one restaurant downtown. Then it got small. At some point, we couldn't fit in any place in the city, and so many people would just sit around and listen. I said, we need headquarters, and we just rented a house with a big yard, and our brainstorming sessions and all the creative sessions, everything that we invented was done from that little house with the big yard, which we called our headquarters. So you will not get experience like that in the United States because there is no need. But there, during the war, it was the reality. And you have to reinvent yourself. When people ask you, how did you make it through? I say, we had to take one step. We are in this big, dark mess. What is the best one step that we can take towards our goal? And the goal was survival. And then when we make that step, we look for the next step. So it's taking always one step at a time. By being an athlete, I know that the longer you go, you just see people stop and they drop off. They just quit. That's how sports work. Somebody gets to a certain level and they say, oh, I cannot take it anymore. Whether it's too difficult physically, emotionally, dealing with injuries. We actually went like that for more than 5 years. And then things changed for better.
Yeah, I agree. Sometimes you don't get an opportunity to make leaps. You get an opportunity to take one step. But you should be conscious of what that step is and try to make the best step. Life throws things at you every day. Life shows up on your doorstep unannounced and says, oh, hey, you thought you were going to do that today? No. Today, we're going to give you this challenge.
Yes.
This is what you have to get through. Whether sometimes it's a small thing, it could be an oil leak on your car, it could be a flat tire, and it could be something huge, a health crisis or something like that. But life doesn't give any indications. Life doesn't send you an email and says, I'll be at your house tomorrow morning at 8:00 and I'm going to give you a flat tire. It just shows up, and people have got to be prepared and understand that. I love that old axiom that says it doesn't matter how many times you get knocked down. It matters how many times you get up. I think that's why, for me, hiring for heart makes so much sense, because you've got people who will get through it. When I was a young naval officer, I would always say, give me the people with the right attitude. I'll train them to do anything. I'll train them to
Yes.
be great. Myself and my chiefs and other officers, we'll train them to be great. I just need somebody who wants to excel every day, who wants to come in and
Yes.
say, teach me something so I can be better tomorrow than I was today. And those people are worth their weight in gold. I appreciate that very much. Let
Hard to
me ask you
find them
this.
though. Hard to find those people. You have to, that's one of the expectations. But you see them, when you meet them, you will know that those people are the people because they're so different.
I'll tell you an interesting experience I had in the last few days. I was at a meeting with some really wonderful people. It was a marketing meeting. We were doing some marketing training, to be honest about it. One of the women that was there was mentoring a very young Gen Zer. She was only 22 years of age. She was going to be her assistant. And she came to the meeting. It was interesting to talk to her because you hear so many things about Gen Z. Oh, they don't do anything. They don't know anything. I was talking to her. She just graduated from college. And I said, so what's on the minds of Gen Zers today? In your opinion, I know this is just one opinion. She told me two amazing things. One is how important trust is to them. Trust matters so much to them. In all the stuff you read in a lot of the journals or websites, you wouldn't get that impression. That trust is so important to them. And the other thing she told me was, and this is so interesting, she said, I think our generation wants to go back to the way things were. So more of the traditional way things are. And I think the sense of ethics, the sense of caring, one way to say it is Gen Zers don't care about me as much as they care about we. And I think that's a very interesting perspective. And I'm going to do more research in that area. I'm very curious now to follow that thread down the road and see where it takes me. So it's a very interesting perspective. I think things come in full circle. Things circle around again. We go back to many things that we believed in that we abandoned for years. So I'm curious to see what the follow through is in that world as well. Let me ask you this as we're getting close to the end here. You mentioned that purpose is more powerful than a second chance. Can you share how that belief has shaped your work and life decisions?
I am fortunate. My biggest motivator is if I'm doing something that comes from the inside. We have this internal compass. And I've done it so many times that to me it becomes natural. If I feel that something wants to come out, like I have to do this, something inside me tells me that I have to do something. I'm going to go after it and see if it really is meaningful. Being a first generation immigrant is a very difficult thing because if you were born, let's say, in the United States, you have a fallback. You have parents, people that you grew up and went to school with. You have some kind of friends. Most people have a lot of friends that they can call, who can help them. You can even go live with them or with your parents when business doesn't work out. And when you're an immigrant, you don't have that opportunity. So you're going only one way. One of the analogies, when I started my business, I had a Saab that only had 4 gears. It didn't have reverse. I could go only forward. And that's actually what I did from 92 until 2015. I had an idea that I'm going to make a lot of money after I spoke at the UN with Brian Tracy, but I took a job in Ukraine and I had to give up my salary. The purpose was that I am responsible for 2,000 families. It's a poor country. And if I don't pay them, but I pay me, they cannot feed their families. That's just as simple as that. The purpose was for the company to survive, but also to provide paycheck for 2,000 families that don't have another chance. To me, it's really meaningful. It's more meaningful than the pen. I know I did the wrong thing for me. At the end of the day, you have to take care of yourself, and I didn't. And I put in so much work there. I worked so hard. I was paralyzed. I couldn't move half of my body. There was so much stress because nothing was working. And everybody was coming to Lyubim and asking, what do we do? When you have a hallway every day, people standing, waiting for hours, you just tell them what to do. It's really draining. And then all the responsibility on you. Now, I think that when you look, I tell everybody, look east, look where the sun is rising. The war is where the sun is rising. And that war wants to go west because east is still living, they have barbarian values. Let's come with force, take what we can take and, plant our flag. And the Western society, we're trying to create value, add value, improve things. And in that place, there are brave men and women who said, I'm going to step in and I'm not going to let them come. When they go to defend us, I think we have a social contract, and the contracts work like this. You go protect me so Lyubim and John can do our thing. We can pursue our dreams and live freely and not worry about that we're going to have a siren and we're going to have to shut down and run into the bunker, which is the reality of life in Ukraine for 4 years. That's how they live. But if something happens to those brave men and women, we have a social contract that we're going to take care of them when they come back. And in reality, that contract is not being kept. Like the United States, we have the best VA program by far in the world, but there's only one problem. When a person is traumatized, sometimes it's really hard to pick up a pen and write your name and all that information, and God forbid that application gets kicked back. They just can't do it because they're traumatized. So my purpose is to balance the scale, because with time, the scale is tipping in the wrong direction. Growing up in the Soviet Union, where they just took the best of their future and sent them to die into some foreign land, Afghanistan, it's nowhere, okay? If we keep failing on our promises to those guys and girls that come back, then at some point they will say, you know what? I've seen what happened to my grandfather. I've seen what happened to my father. I'm not going to go defend. I'm not going to go protect. And that's the world that I don't want to live in. So I'm not doing this for money because I'm never going to become wealthy running Wings for Heroes. There's so many people who need my help. Like, this mission has been self-funded for more than 2 years. I haven't raised any public funds. I'm just getting to there and working 19, 20 hours, 2 days ago. We started at 9 o'clock my time and finished at 1 o'clock in the morning. And the next morning, I have to do my work with Wings for Heroes with veterans and restart the podcasting and moving the mission. My purpose is what drives me. And it wasn't meaningful to me, I would have stopped a long time ago. And some days, I don't know how I'm going to keep going, but I look at them, they're just kids.
Okay.
And I just keep going. So that's the biggest motivator. It comes from inside. And when I'm gone, this is my legacy. And that really motivates me.
I think finding meaning in life is a hard thing to do. There is a great quote I like to talk about, and it comes from a scholar of mythology named Joseph Campbell, who studied mythologies around the world, every nation, every belief system. And he was once asked in 1987, he did a video series called The Power of Myth with journalist Bill Moyers. And Moyers asked him the question, so Joe, is it that we're searching for the meaning of life? Campbell said, no. To search for the meaning of life is futile. What we're searching for is the experience of being alive. So in a sense, what I say when I talk about leadership is, it doesn't matter what life means to me. It's what do I mean to life? And what do I mean to the people around me? We have to remember that. Part of the meaning process is the things that you do, the people and the relationships that you keep. As Viktor Frankl, who wrote Man's Search for Meaning, once said, to make the best of a bad situation and to suffer nobly gives people meaning. I'm on the same wavelength as you in terms of, does it matter? Am I doing something that matters to make people's lives productive, prosperous, and meaningful? Because meaning is the single greatest motivation force on the planet. Nothing even comes close. Lyubim, I want to thank you for your time this morning. I appreciate your time, your effort, your incredible passion, your incredible ability to get up and do something. Do it. And not just talk about it. So I wish you, all your colleagues, your family, all the greatest success in the future. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure, John.